السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلوات الله عليه وسلامه عليه، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، سيما بقية الله في العالمين، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. قال الله في محكم كتابه: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون، أياما معدودات، فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر، وعلى الذين يطيقونه فدية طعام مسكين، فمن تطوع خيرا فهو خير له، وأن تصوموا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah, we're getting close and close to the blessed month of Ramadan. And to have better experience in the month of Ramadan, we need to prepare from now with supplication, with trying to get closer and nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to do that, we have to know certain things about Ramadan and some ruling, at least basic ruling, regarding fasting in the month of Ramadan. But before we start talking about the ruling and the Ahkam of the month of Ramadan and the fasting, I would like to talk a little bit about the idea of fasting and the way Quran is talking about fasting. And sometimes we consider fasting as an obligation, which it is. But sometimes we forget about the purpose of fasting. As you know, fasting is not something only about not eating and not drinking and not doing certain things, right? To keep your fasting valid, right? But some other things we need to do in order to get the benefit of fasting in terms of spirituality. One of the things, there's a narration, and actually plenty of narrations regarding fasting, and something that they really encouraged us, that as you're fasting, as you're avoiding from things like drinking, like eating, try to avoid and forbid yourself from things that it's forbidden, right? It's prohibited, even ethically, in terms of manner and ethic or akhlaq. For example, in some narration, they say that while you're avoiding drinking water, while you're avoiding eating food, you need to avoid from backbiting, right? From gossiping, from watching where you look, what you look, right? So throughout the month of Ramadan, a believer is trying to adjust himself to the best manner that prophets, all the prophets, they came in order to teach us all those virtues. And at the same time, throughout the teaching of Prophet, peace be upon him, and the Imams, alayhim as-salatu was-salam, is just to adjust yourself in order to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning, when you practice those virtues throughout the 1 month of Ramadan, you make it possible for yourself, right? It's kind of a great struggle that a believer will have in order to keep valid his fasting, right? And the fact that we're not eating, the fact that we're not drinking water or anything, is just a practice, a very beneficial practice to fight against the self-desire, right? We're tend to eat and drink whenever we want. And there's no practice that we can sometimes say no to our self-desire, right? And if we keep saying yes to whatever we want, we cannot build any virtues. And not eating, not drinking is the first step to reach that perfection in terms of characteristic and ethic and akhlaq. So one of the things that we have in the month of Ramadan is to fast. But Quran in Surah Baqarah, verse number 882, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking to believers that we have assigned or booked some certain days for you to fast, for you to avoid things that it's not acquired, right? It's not allowed, in order to make that fasting valid, like drinking, like eating. But Quran is drawing our attention in the history of fasting. كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم. The same thing that we did to other nations. So it's not something that is new for Muslims. No, other religion, they have their own way of fasting. Sometimes they have more than 1 month. Sometimes they have less than 1 month. Sometimes they have certain way even of fasting. لعلكم تتقون. You may become a muttaqi, right? A God worry. And then the next ayah, أياما معدودات, the days that it's assigned for you. فمن كان منكم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخر. And he's talking about if you're sick or if you're in a trip that it's necessary, you don't need to do fast. There is no harm, right, in the religion of Islam. Whenever it's hard for someone, which we're going to discuss about it, so fasting is not wajib for that person. And then I would like to talk about this part. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. You know, sometimes we're fasting, but because this fasting is not out of love, it's mostly out of whatever you can call, but it's not love. It's something that I have to do. It's something that I'm forced to do it. Sometimes it can be, a habit. Sometimes it can be a fear from the punishment, right? But if someone fasts out of desire, out of love, and understand the benefit of fasting, and understand the other factor or benefit of fasting, like if they say in narration, make sure that your hand is fasting, make sure that your tongue is fasting, meaning take care of them. So if someone does all those things within the month of Ramadan, that love will be created, that love will be more active, and then they are not tired after few days they pass, and they're just waiting for finishing the month of Ramadan, right? So Quran is saying that you want to do it, and you have to do it, and you're doing it. So make sure that you're doing out of love, because that's better for you. فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. You know, like you ask your children that you have to study, you have to sit down for 1 hour, for 2 hours, for 6 hours, to study for an exam, let's say. And then they're just, struggling, they're trying to be distracted, they try to look at everything but their book. And then you go on to them that you say, you have to sit down and you have to spend time, this much time, on your table in front of your book and notebooks, and you have to do it. And then you would say, see, make sure and try to enjoy from that time, right? Because it's better for you. You try to, draw their attention on the facts that learning is a beneficial thing for your future. And here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing the same thing. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ. And if you do it out of your desire, out of your love, and you like it, that's better for you. وَأَنْ تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. And you're fasting, if you're fasting, that's better for you. إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. If you may know. And that's basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is using the term of ilm and knowledge, which is very beautiful. Ilm and knowledge in Quran doesn't mean knowing something or knowing the information. Like I know the benefits of fasting, right? But that doesn't mean I have ilm, I have knowledge about the benefit of fasting. When I can achieve that level, once I feel it in my heart, right? And for those people, they call ulama, they call them people that they possess knowledge. And those people that they are those people that when they pray before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're humble. As much as I have ilm and knowledge, true knowledge, I'll become more humble. So here, Allah is saying, if you want to reach that level, try to understand, try to reach the ma'rifah and the knowledge of fasting. The most crucial thing about fasting is to practice on all our organs of body that we were using it throughout the day in the month of Ramadan. So if we don't practice, if we're fasting but we're talking about others, or if we're fasting but we're not taking care of our eyes, right? If we're fasting but we're using our time wastefully, and we're wasting our time in different things, but remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so of course that kind of fasting becomes a burden on my shoulder, a huge weight on my shoulder, that I'm waiting for the Eid al-Fitr. Of course, all of us, we will get tired, we all get hungry, we'll get thirsty, and that's basically a part of that struggle. That's basically the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving reward for those people that they struggle more, they give more. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give reward more for those people that they struggle more than others. So that's basically, obviously He knows, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that if someone practice the fasting in the best way, the reward would be more. And one of the reward in this life would be the joy of ibadah and prayer. For example, in the nights of Qadr. The night of Qadr is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is preparing us from the month of Rajab to Sha'ban, and from the month of Sha'ban to Ramadan, in order for us to be prepared for those beautiful nights of Qadr. And this year, it's hard for us to keep that remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's challenging this year more than any year, because we're closed, our masjid is closed, and I know at least we will be more appreciative toward masjids and our Islamic centers. But at the same time, it's so hard to keep that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because when it's open, you see others are fasting, you see others are reciting Quran, others are reciting dua, right? And you get motivated just by seeing other believers, they're doing the same thing. But this year, we don't have it. And from our side, we try to do our best. We try to create different programs, short programs every day in the month of Ramadan, at least before the time of iftar, that we can play on and watch with our family. And even the night of Qadr, we will have program, but this year the responsibility will be more on the shoulder of parents, right? That they can keep their house with the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And maybe it's a blessing, at least based on this perspective, that we can bring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more in our house, right? We can make our house a place of worship in this beautiful and holy month of Ramadan. So that was my introduction. If you want to go through the ayat of Quran about Ramadan, one of the very beautiful ayats are in Surah Al-Baqarah, number 182 to 186. Very beautiful, and things that we may not know and even didn't think about these beautiful facts about the month of Ramadan and its fasting. So going to our discussion would be short, this session probably. It's based on question of you, but there are obviously plenty of rulings in regard to fasting, especially the month of Ramadan. And you can always go and refer to the book of ruling Ahkam, Tawdi'ul Masail of your marja. But today we're going to discuss the most common ruling of fasting. The very first thing that in any act of worship we need to think of is the intention, right? If you want to do something, especially act of worship and obligations, we need to make sure that we have that intention, right? For example, when we want to pray, you need to have that intention that you're going to recite, let's say, Salatul Fajr, qurbatan ila Allah, in order to get nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But do I need to say it with my tongue? No. I can say it with my tongue, but it's not wajib for me. It's not an obligation to perform the intention with my tongue. The idea is the intention itself, not the words. So as long as I know that what I'm doing for what reason, for whom, that's enough. So even if I say my intention with my tongue, I'm doing Salatul Fajr because of my father, right? Or my friends are there. I want to show them that I'm reciting and I'm performing Salatul Fajr. Even though I'm doing with my tongue, because it's not from heart, I have to do it again. Even Maraj, they said that if someone does perform a salah or an act of worship, but the intention is not pure and he or she knows it, they have to do it again, even though they said it with tongue. So if I don't say it with my tongue, but I'm doing it sincerely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's even better. So the idea is just intention itself. We have to remember that. So for Ramadan is the same thing too. For Ramadan, let's say I slept and I didn't even wake up for suhoor, right? And I woke up for Fajr, and it's already Azan's time. And I didn't make my intention. But the fact that I'm in the month of Ramadan and I know what I'm doing, that's basically a valid point that I can continue my fasting till, inshallah, I finish the iftar. And there are other factors too, like the intention, like I said, it should be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, it should be out of humbleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And sometimes, if someone doesn't know even what he's doing, what she's doing, let's say it's the first day of Ramadan, let's say. And again, before explaining that, I have to mention that some people, they do fast before even it's the first day of Ramadan, because obviously they don't know which day is exactly the month of Ramadan. So they fast that day. And they said that your intention should be qada, fasting. And if it's you hear the news, or you saw, or you understood by yourself that it's the first day of Ramadan, you can always change your intention. And that's basically, we have to keep it in mind. It's very good that we fast that day. We make sure we fast the first, even one day before the first day, that we can make sure that we're fasting, right? Because sometimes it can be the first day. But sometimes in the middle of the month of Ramadan, the guy is like, he or she forget that the day is Ramadan, and he woke up before Salatul Dhuhr, right? And because he woke up before Salatul Dhuhr, so he didn't do anything that makes the fasting invalid, right? So he can continue his intention to do fasting. So if you have any question regarding intention, you can always comment it, and we can go through the questions later, inshallah. And sometimes that's a common thing too. Sometimes a person gets sick, and he or she is not doing fasting for a few days, and one day he wakes up and he feels that he's good, he's fine now, he's fine. But he didn't make that intention for suhoor, because last night he was sick, and he thought that if he fasts, it will harm him, right? As I said, even in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that if fasting is harming you, you're not allowed to fast as you're traveling, right? So this person woke up before Salatul Zuhr, and he understood that he has to fast. He can fast. So he can always make intention that he can fast, unless he did something that it make his fasting invalid, like eating, like drinking. But as long as he didn't do anything that harms fasting, he can, or she can, always make intention at the time. And next step would be the idea of mubtilatul sawm, right? The things that makes our fasting invalid, باطل. خوردن, eating, drinking always makes a fasting invalid. And we're going to discuss a little bit about when and how. And having a sexual relationship will make the fasting invalid. And any act of sexual activity will make fasting invalid. And lying and saying things that is not true about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the imams, that makes a fasting invalid too. For example, God forbid, I say something like, say, Imam Ali والسلام, said this, but that's not a true statement. That makes the fasting invalid as well. And thick dust makes the fasting invalid based on most of maraja. What does that mean? For example, I'm working in an environment that there are a lot of dusts, and these dust, small amount of dust is okay, but when it becomes too much, if I swallow, it goes through my uh, uh, you know through my mouth and it enters to my body, that makes the fasting invalid as well. And then another thing is being in the state of janabat, or for women as well too, till the salat and adhan of fajr. So it's very important that we perform ghusl right before adhan starts. And also vomiting purposely. If someone vomit accidentally, right, without knowing it, all of a sudden it came, that's okay. But sometimes, you know that it's happening, and they do something that in order to vomit, that makes a fasting invalid. Before going through some of the ruling in terms of regarding uh, eating and drinking, I have to note that we have a few days, I think 12, maybe 11 days to the month of Ramadan. And if we have fasting that we have to make up, we have to make them up, we have to do it now, and it's a good time to connect the month of Sha'ban to the month of Ramadan. And even if I don't have anything from last year, fasting in the month of Ramadan, it's really recommended. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through our prophets and imams, they encourage us to fast in the blessed month of Sha'ban as well. Sometimes eating can be okay, or drinking. And when, for example, someone wake up and he or she doesn't know that he or she is fasting, and he just start drinking and eating, and all of a sudden he remembers that he's fasting. So this is okay, right? Because it's not purposefully, right? It's not something that I did it and I knew that what I'm doing it. Especially in the beginning of Ramadan, because we're not used to it, we may do things like that, right? And for that, we shouldn't be worried about that, as long as it's not out of desire, out of knowledge. So we're okay to continue our fasting, inshallah. And sometimes, which this one is common too, and some people, they tend to eat till the adhan of Fajr, which imsak, meaning stopping, stopping, eating, drinking, like few minutes before Fajr, is very good and is must. But some people, they don't do it, and they keep eating it. They keep eating until they hear the adhan of Fajr. Especially for those people, this ruling is common, and sometimes, he or she doesn't even notice the adhan, and a bite even is in his mouth, and someone said, yeah, it's as on time now. So that they say that you have to take out that bite even. And if it's not possible, if it's almost there, it's okay. But you have to take it out. Otherwise, your fasting would be invalid. And make sure before Fajr, we have to clean our teeth and brush our teeth, because sometimes it may stay foods over there in between our teeth. So that's basically even taking it out during day make the fasting invalid. So we have to do that. And so many times people, they ask question if I need a certain medicine, right? For example, a certain type of injection. Sometimes it's vitamins, sometimes it's antibiotics, anything. Is it okay to do it based on Ayatollah Sistani? Yeah, it's okay as long as it's necessary, and as long as the doctor gave it to you, it's okay to do those. Inshallah, you will be healthy and you don't need all those things. So we're going through the. I think we have talked about the idea of not saying wrong thing on behalf of Ma'soom alayhi salatu wasalam, the prophets, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being more careful about those things. And I always see it as a practice, obviously, because sometimes we tend to talk about religion in a way that we know everything. And, knowing and saying that I don't know, it's a virtue many times, especially in terms of Quran and Hadith, because we're dealing with the most important part of our life, right? The spiritual life. And if we teach others wrong messages, obviously we have to answer on the day of judgment. So especially in the month of Ramadan, if someone does it, obviously the salat would be invalid. Taking shower is okay in the month of Ramadan. Some people, they always ask question, is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. Even brushing teeth during the month of Ramadan is okay, as long as you don't swallow anything while you're doing while you're washing your teeth. As long as you keep them out, that's fine too. So it's okay to do all those things. So sometimes some people, they, for any reason, they don't want to do fast, right? And if someone miss one day of fasting without any valid excuse, valid reason, that makes it so hard to make it up. Yeah, for elderly, for women that are pregnant, for women that are breastfeeding children, for people that are sick, right? For people that they have fear that they're going to get sick, especially new fatwa from Ayatollah Sistani, hafazahullah, regarding coronavirus and the fear of getting infected of coronavirus. He said that if someone has fear, and this fear is a valid fear, right? And know that if he fasts or she fasts, will be harm from this disease, he or she can drink, right? And for some people, even being thirsty, they cannot handle. And for some people, it's so hard to handle being thirsty or being hungry, right? And for those people, they said that they can eat, they can drink, but as much as it fulfill the feeling of hunger or thirst, right? Not too much. But when the Ramadan finish, they can make it up. But if someone, without all these excuses, eats or drink, for that we call they have to do or perform kafara, which kafara meaning either 60 days of fasting for only one day, or feeding uh, 60 needy, right? And any of them, if they do, it's okay. So we have to make sure that we teach our children, those people that they maybe they are careless about fasting. We have to make sure that we tell them this, right? That inshallah, when they later on, when they decide to do fast, uh, they don't need to face this severe, obviously, way of making the fasting up. I think we don't have any question today, which it's a, I think, good sign, because alhamdulillah, you all know about the ruling of fasting. So I think we're okay to finish this session, and inshallah we will be responding. If you have any questions, you can always contact me through the email that we weekly send at the bottom of the emails. You can see my emails. You can always send your question, and inshallah we can answer those questions through different lectures that we have. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and the opportunity that we can get benefit from the month of Sha'ban, few days we have left, and also we can reach the month of Ramadan with the ultimate forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us tawfiq, that we can get closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through fasting, through reciting Quran, through fulfilling our obligations. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the reappearance of Imam al-Hujjah Ajjalallahu ta'ala Farjuhu Sharif. Wassalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.